Shall we pray? Our gracious Heavenly Father, Almighty God, once again we praise your name for the health reform seminars, O Lord, that you have prepared for us as manna through Dr. Janie and Unruh. This afternoon we continue, O Lord, and we are looking forward to being blessed some more on this journey. I pray for our doctor, our guest speaker. May you be with her once again and put your words in her mouth. Let them be a blessing to us. May you bless everyone here and those who are listening online as well. Once again, we give you all the glory. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Doc?
All right, so this talk is called Satan's War on Fruit. And if I could have everybody kind of move forward, move to the front rows and everybody move forward. So because we're going to have a Q&A at the end as well. Instead, it's so nice to not have everyone so spread out. Thank you so much. That's much nicer. All right, so this morning we went over the original design, and let's go back to Genesis 1. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass." Now we can't digest grass. So when you look in the original Hebrew text, it actually is sprouts. So that's young, tender greens. The herb yielding seed and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, or sprouts, and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. So here we have in verse 11 that God is creating. He says he's going to create it, the food, and in 12 he does create it, and in 29 he then tells us what our diet is, and then in 2:16 he actually commands our diet, and then in 3:1-6 we read that God warns us about deviating. He warns us that Satan is the most subtle. This is like a red flashing light, hello, and most of the time, we just kind of read through these without stopping to really define some of these words to what is it that God's actually trying to say to me here. So in these flashing lights, God says, now the serpent was more subtle. And then we read that this morning, and then it says in verse 4, and the serpent said unto the woman, you shall surely not die. So here we have that God gives us a command, and if we eat of anything different of that, we surely will die. But Satan leads us to believe that we will not die. So here's a principle that we are not at liberty to eat however we want. Just because something tastes good or I like something, this is how I was raised in the church, this is how I was raised by my family, my mom made loving food for me. We aren't living in those days anymore. We are living at the very end of time. We know that the mark of the beast is actually forming right now down in the United States. I'm sure that you are all familiar with what's happening down there. that they, on May 17th, that they have dedicated the country back to God again. And then on July 4th, they are actually having a nationwide, President Trump has invited the entire country to Washington, D.C. Anyone who wants to celebrate giving the nation back to God and having one day of rest a week. So this is all starting, and we've been warned about this for 150 years. It's here, it's happening, and it's time to take the next leap of faith into where God's trying to lead us. Now, when we read that quote that says that if we overcome appetite, we can overcome any other sin, then that means that it shows that if I don't overcome appetite, I will not overcome any other sin. And we're told that to the degree that I am willing to deviate from health reform is the same degree that I will be willing to deviate from God's 10 Commandments, from the moral law. Health reform is a moral law. There is a right and wrong, because that's what morality is. Morality is what is right or wrong. Here in Genesis 2:15 through 17, God does tell us what is right and wrong. We can eat of all these other trees except the one in the midst. That's what's right and wrong. That's morality. So there is a moral value to our diet, to what we choose to eat. There is a right way and there is a wrong way. And then if we went through Revelation 22:2, and we went everything in between there. If there's one particular food group that people say, if you were to do a worldwide questionnaire consensus asking one question, if you had to give up one particular food group out of the meat, the dairy, the fruits, the vegetables, the eggs, the processed foods, the sugar, you give people just a bunch of categories of food, what would they give up? And that they would see as the most useless. And did you know worldwide, it's fruit? Most people around the world, including our own people, see no value in fruit. People say, well, it doesn't have any protein. It doesn't have any fat. It causes diabetes. It's got too much sugar. Don't have it if you have cancer. People just come up with, it's too expensive, it's genetically modified, it's sprayed. People come up with all sorts of excuses to not eat fruit. Yet, it's God's command. It's the food that He has actually given us, and the lie is right there in Genesis 3:1. So I want to bring us back to understanding this war on fruit that I have termed Satan's war on fruit. And it's quite accurate when we actually, you may have not really thought about it like that, but as we move along, you're actually going to see that, yeah, there is a war out there. Because don't take fruit if you have diabetes, candida, parasites, cancer, anything like that. Don't have fruit, but yet you can have your meat, you can have your eggs, you can have sugar, but don't have fruit. So let's look at some of these really beneficial properties of fruit. There is no more of a healthy food group on the planet like fruit. All fruit, I don't care what fruit it is, I don't care if it's a melon, a berry, if it's peaches, apricots, any kind of stone fruit, grapes, it doesn't matter. All fruit is an A. All fruit gets an A. Now some might get an A+, but that doesn't take away from any of the other fruits that an A. You really can't get a better food group on the planet than fruit. So let's look at some of these things that we really don't think much about, because we're told don't eat the processed sugars or don't eat fruit because of the sugar. So let's take a look. Now, white sugar is completely void. It's got no nutrients. When you look at the definition of food, the definition is it must be an entire food, must be a whole food, it cannot be extracted, and it must have protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and fiber. If it doesn't have one of those properties, it's technically not food, because God defines food quite differently than our world defines it. The world defines it as anything you can shove in your mouth that's not going to kill you right now. It's not a poison that you eat it and 5 minutes later you're dead. So these are more, the world foods more is a slow poison, and it kills us over decades. And that's because the white sugar is completely void of all of those. It's got no vitamins, no minerals, it's got no fiber, it's got no fat, it's got no protein. It is just a pure sugar, pure. But fruit is very different. It is extremely rich in phytochemicals, antioxidants, bioflavonoids, and anthocyanins. There is no more of a powerful food group, even vegetables. Now they have their special properties, but we're looking at the full picture here. And it's very rich in minerals, such as our potassium, magnesium, calcium, phosphorus, sulfur, chloride, sodium. It's rich in trace minerals, iron, zinc, copper, manganese, boron, chromium, molybdenum. It is rich in fat-soluble vitamins A, E, and K. Now notice that there's no vitamin D there, because God has already taken care of vitamin D through the sun. And so it doesn't need to be there. And then it's rich in water-soluble vitamins, such as vitamin C. We must, as a human being, we must have plenty of vitamin C in our diet, unlike the predators, like lions and tigers. Their body actually makes vitamin C on their own, but ours doesn't. But notice that it's also got all the B's, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9. It's got all the B's, but notice that vitamin B12 isn't there. That's because God's taken care of that too, just like he did the vitamin D. He's taken care of the vitamin B12 through organic gardening, because our counsel is to have homegrown gardens. So we can't blame God for something that is a human problem. Just like if I end up getting rickets because I'm not getting enough vitamin D from the sun, I can't blame God. The sun is out there. The problem is me. It's user error. So if I'm not getting enough vitamin B12, again, we can't blame God because it's a human error. It's our problem. He has provided B12 for us through organic gardening. When we are growing our own foods, there's plenty of B12 on our spinach and all of our greens and all of our garden produce, as long as we're not washing everything to death. And so for the rest of us who don't have organic gardens, then supplementation is strongly recommended, because we do have to have it. The same as if you can't get outside, which I don't know why anyone wouldn't be able to, there is a need for supplementation, but the supplement really is only to hold people over until they can actually get it taken care of. Now B12 is a very unique vitamin in that we have done something to ourselves as well, that we only need about that much vitamin B12. It's about the amount that's on the head of a pin, and that's it. But because it's unique in the way that it is taken into our body, we've created a crisis. And so the meat-eating community likes to say, well, because I have to take a supplement, that means that a vegan diet isn't something that's natural for our race. Well, if we take it a step further, what we've done to ourselves is, so say I'm now just this little embryo in my mom, and as I grow in her, she's taking meat and dairy and eggs and drinking milk every day, thinking she's doing the best thing that she can. And now, because there's lots of B12 on animal products, because B12 is it's bacteria. It's like dirty. And so there's lots and lots of it on animal products. And yet, somehow God has created that our body needs that. It's how we work in symbiosis with our environment. So as I am now born, because my mom is a meat eater, for example, and having lots of dairy and eggs, now when I'm born, my B12 level is way, way high. And my body has become accustomed to that amount of B12. The way that B12 works is that the more that my body intakes, the sloppier my body gets in utilizing, storage, and the usage of it. And so now I only need like that much, but yet I'm getting this much. So now it's like trying to fill up a little kid's pool, you know, those little pools that are round and they're only about that tall and you put in about that much water. And I get a fire truck with a fire hose and I turn it on full blast and I'm trying to fill the kiddie pool. Well, it's just the water is just going everywhere. It's not very efficient. I have to turn down the hose, turn down the amount that I'm getting in so it can actually get into the pool instead of splashing all out. And that's what happens with B12 when I am raised now with animal products. And I've created this problem myself because of my diet. So say I become a young adult and now I decide to become a vegetarian or a vegan. Say I now become a vegan and my body is used to getting this amount of B12, but yet I only need that amount. And so now my body kind of goes into like, whoa, what's happening here? But it's still splashing all over the place even though I'm not getting the same amount of B12 anymore. So we need to retrain the liver, and we need to retrain how it's utilized in our body. Our liver stores about 5 to 7 years of B12. That's why a lot of new vegans don't have any problems in the beginning. But somewhere around 5 to 7 years, maybe a year or two sooner, maybe a year or two later, depending on the individual, but statistically 5 to 7 years. So we've created this problem that now I've become a vegan and now I do have to supplement until I've retrained my liver, meaning I've turned down the fire hose and now just a little bit is going through, but I need to match the amount of B12 through supplementation until I can bring that down again. And this often can take years for people. For me and my body, there was no... I went fully plant-based at a time when all the great vegans of the world, I was brand new into health reform, and they're all saying, you know, no one needs supplementation. Well, I ended up with severe neuropathy and many others as well, and there was no protocol for reversing neuropathy except for drugs. I didn't want drugs, so I had to create my own protocol. And since then, I have created quite a protocol to reverse neuropathy in people without drugs. And it's amazing. So we have to get our B12 up to the amount that our body is used to with animal products, and then we slowly take it down. It took my body about 10 years to readjust because I was so depleted and I had so many problems from not taking the supplementation. And now I just help people to retrain their liver from the very beginning, and then it doesn't take that long, but it can still take a couple of years. So that's that about B12. Fruit is actually calorically life-sustaining. Meaning that if that's the only thing that we had, and we were living out in the tropical wilderness somewhere, and there's just trees galore, and that's all we had, we would be few in a very few nutrients, but calorically we would survive. We can't do that, and we would do it most healthfully for a while, but you can't say that about any other food, not even vegetables, because vegetables don't have the carbohydrates that our body needs in order to supply the fuel. So it can be a whole meal, and our counsel is to even have a fruit fast for a couple of days, and it's very beneficial. And so where we are going to be low in a few of those nutrients, there's one particular food that fills that gap, and that's greens. And so now the greens fill the extra calcium we need, the extra sodium, and the K that we need, and the B12 and the D are provided by God. So it fills in that gap, and also iron should be in here. So it fills in the rest of that gap, and so between greens and fruit, and you just throw in a few nuts and seeds, then we literally have everything that we need for our nutrients. See, our body doesn't care where the nutrients come from. It just it needs to have the nutrients. So if it's all plants, it's getting its nutrients. But we can live a very healthy life for decades and decades until the day that we die with only fruit and greens and a few nuts and seeds. That's it. Does that sound familiar? There is nothing missing out of all the nutrients that our body requires. Outside of fruit, as long as you're getting a nice wide variety of fruit. And then people also say that, well, there's no protein. Well, that used to be true, but that is no longer true knowledge anymore. All fruit has all amino acids. First of all, no plant foods have protein. They all have amino acids, which are the building blocks for protein. Our body doesn't like to get a full protein, or a complete protein as we call it. It wants the building blocks instead. That's why when you see people who are plant-based, they often look younger than somebody who eats meat that has more wrinkles, they have more health problems, they have more fatigue, all sorts of issues. So these problems are not related to plants, they're related to the other foods that we eat. Because we don't want to give up those because we see that fruit is completely useless. Yet it is the healthiest food group on the planet. Doesn't that sound familiar? Fruit, greens, herbs, few nuts and seeds. Doesn't that sound familiar? Like, what diet does that sound like? Yes, that's the Genesis diet. So as a researcher, I've wanted to make sure that this is actually in the research, that I can actually prove to people that it provides everything, and it absolutely does. There's nothing outside of these groups and it makes sense that we don't need anything outside of these foods. Because why would God give us a diet that is nutrient depleted? If he tells us that we are to go back to the Garden of Eden diet, the original plan, then why would he recommend a diet for us that we're going to have sickness over? You see, when we start thinking about it, all of a sudden it doesn't start holding water anymore. But the research does support a whole food, plant-based, raw diet very clearly. Fruit also has no cholesterol, it's got no saturated fat, it is high in simple carbohydrates, which our body needs as an energy source. All fruit has all amino acids in the appropriate amount without the risk of kidney disease. Kidney disease is a protein issue, and it's mainly a complete protein issue. Our body doesn't like to get all of that concentrated protein. It wants the amino acids. So we can eat all the fruit we want all day long and never ever have to worry about kidney disease. But see, we can't do that with animal products because that actually is the cause of kidney disease, or at least one of the causes. All fruit has all amino acids. That is fairly new knowledge. I think it first came out, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that we finally, researchers finally looked at the building blocks of fruit. And now we know for sure that all fruit has all amino acids. Some are high in some, and low in others, where other fruit might be high where this one's low, and it might be low where that one's high. So if we are getting the nice wide variety, we're getting all we need, and our body knows how to store our amino acids until the other building blocks come along, and we don't have to worry about whether we get enough protein. If you get enough fruit and greens with a sprinkle of nuts and seeds, we can get all the calories that we need, we get all the protein that we need, we even get all the fat that we need. Even without the added nuts and seeds, there is already a little bit of fat in our nuts, in our greens and in our fruit. Yes, fruit does have fat as well, and so does greens. So we will get more closer to, what's the one time in life that we need the most amount of protein? What is protein for? Yeah, so it's, people want to, we've been conditioned to think it's for muscles. Well, it is for muscles, it's for repair, and it's also for growth. And so there's one time in our life that we need the greatest amount, and when is the greatest amount of growth happening in our body? Yeah, when in our young years. We're born, and that's when, from 0 to 18, basically, is when we are doing the greatest amount of growing, and many kids are full grown by 12, 13. That's the time that we need the greatest amount of protein, and especially as toddlers even bring it back before that, they are really rapidly growing for the first couple of years. And so they need the most amount of protein. And what about mother's milk? For the first year, they're only just getting mother's milk at the greatest time of growth. And how much is that protein? It's only about 7%. And yet, we have been dealt a bill of goods that we need all this protein when we actually don't. You see, it's Satan's war on fruit. He doesn't want God's people or anybody in the world to be healthy. He doesn't want anybody to see the value of fruit because that's what removes our diseases. Fruit reverses like almost every single disease out there. It's amazing. You take some fruit and some greens, and there's like, and even without our nuts and seeds, you're getting enough protein that matches mother's milk, and we don't have that rapid growth, and we get enough fat from those alone. We have really been dealt a bill of goods, where we think that we need all this fat, all this protein, yet that's what's killing us. What we need is the high carbohydrate that comes from fruit. Because every single cell in our body needs fruit, that kind of glucose, in order to run efficiently. We can eat it in abundance with less concern of weight gain. It's almost impossible to gain a bunch of weight and to be obese on fruit. You'd have to eat and eat and eat beyond comfort at every meal. And then you'd have to be eating like 6 times a day. You'd have to just be eating and eating until you're sick of eating in order to become obese on fruit. You don't ever see a fruitarian or a frugivore that's obese. And yet they eat a ton of fruit. So a fruitarian is somebody who eats only fruit, and they may or may not eat the non-sweet fruits, because there's sweet fruits and then there's non-sweet fruits. The non-sweet fruits are like the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the peppers, the eggplant, the okra. Those are the non-sweet fruits. So a fruitarian may or may not eat those, but a frugivore is the Garden of Eden diet. So God's trying to take us back to a frugivore diet. A frugivore is somebody who eats the main portion of their calories as fruit, and then they also eat greens and herbs and a few nuts and seeds. That's a frugivore. So that's where God's trying to take us. Fruit eliminates toxins at a cellular level. They remove heavy metals. It purges stagnant fat. It cleans every single cell in our body with that high fruit water, because oranges are very, very high in that fruit water, and it's that fruit water that helps at a cellular level to detoxify us in a natural kind of a way. It is rich in fiber to prevent blood sugar spikes, unlike refined sugars. And it is lowest in sodium and calories next to vegetables. And it is natural in nitrates, prebiotics, postbiotics, and chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the green, that it's the energy from the sun. So when we have the sun come out, it hits our trees and our grass and the leaves, and it turns everything green. If you were to put a blanket over your grass in the summer, well, it's eventually going to start turning yellow from a lack of sunshine, because that the sun's rays are the food for our greens. And so we have to have chlorophyll in our diet. That's where the greens come from. And then the postbiotics and prebiotics, well, we don't need pills. We just need more fiber. And that fiber comes from our beans and our vegetables, our greens, our fruit. And then natural nitrates, I'm not talking about the man-made nitrates that come from man, like nitrates you find in bologna as a preservative. I'm talking about natural nitrates, and God has provided them, and we do need them. They are abundant in anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, unlike any other fruit or any other food on the planet. It reduces the risk of every single disease. It's anti-aging to both the brain and the body. It's high in oxidation, it's anti-aging because of a lack of oxidation, lowered, and because they're antioxidants. And we think about how the lack of fruits and vegetables in our diet in their raw form is only what's causing the physical problems, but also our mental problems like ADHD, the bipolar, the Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, the dementia, the depression, anxiety, the brain fog, all of that, that's caused by not enough fruits and vegetables in our diet. They kill bacteria and viruses. They boost the immune system. It is the easiest and most efficient food to digest. Fruit is very easy to digest, and one of those reasons is because of enzymes. The enzymes are the staff of life. They are in all raw food. They're very heat sensitive. So as soon as we heat our fruits and vegetables, we destroy the enzymes. There are so many enzymes that are in fruits and vegetables. Specifically, I'm talking about fruit here because most people already know. See, there's no war out there on vegetables. The war is on fruit. And that's why I talk about fruit specifically. So I'm not downgrading vegetables at all. It's that I'm trying to prove a point that there's nothing wrong with fruit. In fact, it's not only nothing wrong with it, but is extremely beneficial and absolutely necessary for our good health. And it's the diet that God is trying to lead us back to. So because of the enzymes, our body now doesn't have to create them. What it does is if we get all this cooked food in our body has to go out to the rest of our body and say, oh, you gotta unassemble yourself because say we got an injury somewhere. Well, we've got enzymes for everything in our body. Enzymes that help us to see, help us to hear, to taste. We have enzymes that run our blood, that run our liver, that run our pancreas. You see, we need enzymes for every single function in our body. For me to move my finger, it takes enzymes. When I have no enzymes left in my life ceases. I must have enzymes. So fruit has enough enzymes that it actually breaks down itself, and where my body doesn't have to go out and bring back from the assembly line all of these enzymes and proteins and then reassemble them in another factory in my body, and then now make enzymes, because now I've had a heart attack and I've got the heart enzymes I'm sure that you've all heard about. That if doctors want to know if someone's had a heart attack, they take blood and they're testing for the heart enzymes. Because are the enzymes elevated? Because now the body is producing these kinds of enzymes that it normally doesn't produce, and wherever there's injury is where the enzymes are now made. And our body goes through a hard time when it has to pull all these proteins and amino acids and enzymes out of other places in our body. So it needs to reassemble them to wherever it needs to go. But with fruit, it just comes with them naturally. It is in a perfect symmetry of protein, carbohydrates, fats, and enzymes, and fiber. Everything is just perfect for its own digestion. I don't know if you know any frugivores out there who only eat a raw diet, but if you do, you'll notice that they are people who look very, very young. And even there are 70 and 80 years old, 70 and 80-year-olds out there that are eating only a frugivore diet, and they look 30 years younger. They barely look over 50, and they might be 80. It's amazing, and that's because of the enzyme bank that fruit provides. There are many healing properties in fruit that are not found in animal products. So if we are looking to heal something or to prevent disease, then we need all of this list here. So the healing properties that are not found in animal products are vitamin C, E, K, B9, B7, flavonoids, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory properties. We absolutely have to have fiber, complex and simple carbohydrates, chlorophyll, prebiotics, sulforaphane, magnesium, natural nitrates, hydration. Basically everything that is found in fruit is not found in animal products. They don't provide the healing for us that our body actually needs. So a lot of people say that, I'm not sure how these these slides, looks like some of them kind of got on top of each other. I'm not sure how that happened. But so there are several disease-promoting compounds in animal products. Because a lot of people think, well, Jesus ate fish, and I'm trying to lose weight, and I'm trying to get rid of my diabetes, and the world is out there, and what kind of diet are they on? A high-meat diet. A carnivore diet, yes, exactly. So if we are trying to reverse and prevent disease, then we have to look at the components of animal products to see why animals aren't the answer to prevention and reversal of disease. They're very high in cholesterol, they're very high in calories. Per 100 grams of animal products, there's between 135 to 400 calories, but for plant foods on 100 grams of plants, there's only 50 to 100 calories. That's one of the reasons why it's very difficult to become fat as a vegan, and whether a frugivore or not. I mean, just eating plants like brown rice and quinoa, eating our root vegetables, those kind of brown rice. So they have a much lower content of fat and protein and the disease-promoting calories. So they're very high in saturated fat. It raises the LDL, which is linked to heart disease and stroke. They're very high in trans fats. They contain the fat in blood. And our people who are eating animal products still, you must know that if you think that you're in the right for eating animals because they're clean, you might want to think again, because it's actually against God's principles anyway, because any animal product that is in the grocery store, it will still have the fat and blood. So we are out of God's command, even if we are eating meat. If we do eat it, it should be in the kosher, or don't eat it at all. The animal products have complete proteins, which stimulate cancer cells. They're very high in acid, and it causes protein fermentation because it takes so long to break down. In a plant-based meal, the meal is usually out of the digestion well before 24 hours, 12 to 24 hours, where an animal-based meal doesn't leave the digestion even up to 72 hours or more, depending on what you ate, how much you ate, if you're snacking, and if you continue to have it meal after meal, it starts to accumulate. So it matters. Our body doesn't like complete proteins. It just creates fermentation in our gut. And then the hemi-iron. And what's the first thing that doctors will usually tell us if we are low in iron and a low hemoglobin? What's the first thing that they tell us to eat, especially if they find out we are vegan? Yes, liver, meat, yes. But there are many other things. There are many plant-based iron products as well, and that is, the number one is found in greens. And that's because we're not eating enough greens that we then become low in hemoglobin. And there are other things as well, but that's just a big one and I'm not talking about a side salad here. I'm talking about, for example, the salad that you guys had on your potluck table that was to be shared among everybody. That would be the amount of one salad for one person in one meal. That's the amount of greens that I'm talking about. Yes, it does take time to get there. Your body has to adjust to that amount of fiber. But see, that's what we're going to be eating in heaven forever and ever and ever. We're going to be eating giant salads, lots of greens, and we're going to be eating lots and lots of fruit. So why not just start practicing right now? Because when we're on the run, what do we think God's going to feed us? He's not going to be having a fire. He's not going to be bringing us beans and rice and our hot dogs and ice cream. He's going to be bringing the food of heaven. And see, our training grounds right now on earth is in preparation for heaven, because there's a pre-investigation going on right now. That investigation that's going on right now is to show the unfallen worlds and the unfallen angels that we are safe to take to heaven or not. Then you have the investigative judgment that happens for 1,000 years. And then you've got the post-investigation that shows why the unredeemed are not saved. You see, there's 3 parts to that, and we're in that first investigation right now. We're in the investigative judgment. The unfallen world is looking at each one of our lives. Are we safe to take to heaven to make sure that there's not going to be a rebellion again? And if we have any part of our appetite that has not been tamed yet, and we're still eating our 14 Twinkies a day, and I'm not willing to give them up, then will I be safe to take to heaven? Because again, we're told that if I overcome appetite, I can overcome every other sin. Meaning that if I don't overcome appetite, I will be in rebellion. And I will break God's law to the same degree. Giving you lots of food for thought, eh? It's also very high in the sulfur amino acids, the methionine, the AGEs, the HCAHs, the PAHs, the endotoxins, the antibiotics, and the things that then get injected into animals. They are very high in naturally present hormones, which your body and my body, all mammals have go through cycles of hormones, and that's quite normal. And so you've got natural hormones, then we wonder why when we take animal products into our body, we wonder why I start having problems with my hormones now. Because I'm adding on so many other hormones that it just creates havoc in my body. And then now not only on top of naturally present hormones, now cows are impregnated and then they're milked while they're pregnant, which now with lactation, there's many more hormones, which leads to higher levels of reproductive hormones, and the estrogens are 100 times higher in late pregnancy milk, and we drink that. And we start to wonder why I start having hormone problems. Progesterone then is heavily elevated. The IGF-1 is elevated, and it's that IGF-1 that is well researched to show that it's got so much cancer relation to it. And then now the third step is not only do they naturally have enough hormones, but now we're drinking and eating pregnant animals and their animal products, but now we have to add in the added hormones that are injected into their bodies. And all of these things are then injected into them in order to help them to grow faster, bigger, so they can get more money. Now the fad diets are those diets out there that are high in protein. And that's very common, and they come in different forms like the Atkins, South Beach, Zone, Protein Power, Eat for Your Blood Type, Ketogenic, Paleo, Carnivore Diet. And did you know that the doctor who really popularized the Eat for Your Blood Type, he went and debunked it a few years back. And yet he's the one who popularized it, so I'm glad that he came out. But he's not demonizing fruit like he used to, and he's actually debunked that there was any truth to that. And we can just look in the Garden of Eden. We can look during the Exodus with all the Israelites. We can look to Revelation 22:2. We can look to see, does it even sound reasonable that we would be eating different diets according to our blood type? We don't see some lions and tigers and hyenas eating one way and then other hyenas eating another way. No, they all have the same diet. All chimpanzees have the same diet. They don't eat according to their blood type. When we start to reason with it, these doctors have popularized it because of monetary gain, but it's not truth when it comes to Bible. There's a lot of misconceptions of fruit out there, But the one thing that I wanted to leave you with about the fad diets is all fad diets say that fruit is bad. And yet they extol the benefits of animal products. So some of those misconceptions are don't eat bananas and grapes, they're going to make you fat with a carb overload. Well, I don't know about you, but I've had a banana pretty much every single day of my life for the last 30 years. And there have been times when I've had 7 or 8 bananas in one sitting. And so it doesn't even make sense. I mean, so if that were true, I would have to be on a weight loss program. It doesn't even make sense that bananas make us fat. You see, Satan will just come up with anything that he has to in order to sway us away from fruit. Whatever sounds reasonable, and in us health people, we're quite gullible, and we're just going to believe anybody out there, well, Dr. So-and-so, said something, and that's why I no longer use research. Because it's your research against my research, but I say let's get back to the Bible and the spirit of prophecy and start using that as our foundation again, instead of research. Because we have become people of the research. We're no longer people of the Word. So I say, let's get back to the Word. So mangoes and cherries have too much sugar, but yet no one ever mentions all the fiber that's in those fruits. You see, it's all of the first screen that I had were all the beneficials, all the vitamins, the minerals, the bioflavonoids, the antioxidants. You see, no one ever mentions all of those when they say don't eat too much sugar. So we're basically telling God that he's flawed when we tell him that his fruit has too much sugar. We're telling him that he's wrong. We're also told don't have cranberries because it's going to cause kidney stones. Well, I think that's kind of funny because it's often cranberries that's recommended when people have kidney problems. But yet it's a misconception out there. Don't take oranges because they're going to erode your tooth enamel. Well, I have oranges probably every single day also, and there might be times I have maybe 17 of those little mandarins in one sitting. And if oranges or citrus created tooth enamel, I wouldn't have any teeth. Some of these things just don't hold water, but there is one that might hold water a little bit until we know the full truth. But we're told don't eat leafy greens or limes because it can interfere with some medications. Now, if anyone that you know is on an anticoagulant, what's the first thing that your anticoagulation nurse is going to tell you? Don't eat greens. Because there's a contradiction in you see, if you have a heart attack or a stroke or a thrombosis of some sort, you're going to be put on an anticoagulation in order to thin your blood out more than natural. So they're trying to create really watery kind of blood, and so they always warn you, be careful, don't stub your toe or hurt yourself or cut yourself because you could bleed out. That's not normal. And so vitamin greens have a lot of vitamin K, which help to coagulate our blood naturally. And so they work in opposition to each other. So when someone comes to me and says, Dr. Janie, my goal is to get off of my medications. I'm not a medical doctor, but I know how to work with people to get them off their drugs. So I have to call the anticoagulation nurse and their doctor and work with them, and I have to teach them, look, we have a patient in common who's asked me to help them get off their medications. I need your help. And so I have to educate them about how greens work and, about diet stuff, and then we can safely get the person off of these medications safely. We're also told don't eat strawberries because they're bad for the environment. Now, this one's kind of hilarious as well. And us health people, we're very gullible because of all the sprays. You know, well, I can't eat fruit, can't eat my vegetables because of all the sprays and the herbicides, the fungicides, the pesticides. But let me bring some reality to this situation, because I will never not tell you to, I will never tell you to not eat fruit. Now, strawberries, if you're familiar with the Environmental Working Group down in America, it's a nonprofit that takes fruits and vegetables once a year throughout all the big box stores, and they test them for how many pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and all the chemicals that are on them. The number one food that has come up again and again is strawberries. They are so filthy that you can juice them, and without adding anything to it, you can put it on your crop as a herbicide. That's how filthy they are. Yet, I will never tell you to not eat non-organic strawberries. Why? It's because of a process called bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation is I'm going to compare it to animals so we can kind of get a grasp on the reality of this. So you got little fish that are this big. They're breathing, little guys, so they are breathing in and they're bringing in toxins. Our waters are polluted, and it's just the way it is. And so they gain toxins every single day of their life. And if they live 5 years, they've got 5 years of toxins accumulated. Toxins accumulate in the fat cells and in the liver, and you can't take it out. You can't burn it out, you can't cook it out, you can't freeze it out. It just goes there, and there's nothing that you can do about that fat or those toxins. Now you get a fish this big that eats 20 of those little tiny fish a day. All of the toxins that are in those little fish now get transferred into the larger fish. So if that larger fish lives 5 years, and it's eating 20 of those little ones a day for 5 years, you can imagine the accumulation of toxins that have been built up into that poor little fish. Now you get a fish this big, and the process continues. They eat, 10 of those little ones a day. I don't know how many they eat. I'm just making up these numbers. But if they eat 10 a day, and of the littler ones, and now they have all that accumulation. So, and then you've got really big fish, and the bigger the fish, the more toxic they are. Until you get up to whales and orcas, and even if you get up to some of the smaller ones like seals and that size. So now you've got all this accumulation from those little tiny fish into the bigger fish, into the bigger fish, into the bigger fish, and every fish continues to bioaccumulate. So this accumulation now starts to now we go fishing, and we take one of those fish and we put it into our body. Now all of those toxins go into our body. And if you can imagine the toxins that they have in them, they have this amount of toxins in them. Our strawberries have that much in comparison. You see, it doesn't hold water that we don't want to eat our fruits and vegetables because they're sprayed. Now, am I saying to go out and eat sprayed fruits and vegetables? No, I'm not. But I will never tell you, if that's all you can afford, I will tell you, go out with God's blessing and get your fruits and vegetables. Because did you know that the documentaries on health, like Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and some of the more recent ones, that was one of the first ones years ago that popularized these kind of documentaries. And then you've got Dominion, and you've got Cowspiracy, and then you've got the game one, game something, and talking about athletes. and all of them use non-organic. So our body can heal when we look at the amount of toxins in proportion to what they are. We see that we will only get that amount of toxins compared to this. And our toxins are mainly found in all animal products as well as processed foods, most of our processed foods. You can't cook it out, you can't freeze it out, it's just there. And then we we need to start detoxifying our body because of what we're eating. And so then we end up with health problems ourselves. So there is a little bit of truth, but let's talk about the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is called bioaccumulation. So we don't have to fear our fruits and vegetables, even though they are non-organic and they have been sprayed. Fad diets never include an all-fruit feast, yet that is our counsel. I'm going to go over that. Fad diets all say that fruit is bad and that we need to cut down and eliminate it. Now I used to, because I'm a researcher, I used to have research behind every single one of these diseases here. But I've taken them out because I want us just to have our solid foundation on God. On the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy, let's see what they say. Who cares what the research says? We put way too much emphasis on research. So a high fruit diet reduces the risk of diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, obesity, cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, stroke. It promotes bone health. It helps with detoxification, improves eye conditions, autoimmune disease, arthritis, asthma, inflammatory diseases, mental health issues, mood imbalances, brain deterioration. So all the mental health problems can be helped through diet. Bowel disease, headache, migraines, and the list just goes on and on. But I want to share something with you. It's really important for you to understand this. So as there is the rest of the truth in Genesis 3:1, where we're told Satan is the most subtle, and didn't God say that we could eat of every fruit of every tree in the garden? Well, yes, he did, but there's the rest of the story. So we are told, if you have diabetes or if you have cancer, if you have any kind of issues of candida, don't eat fruit. But I want to share now the rest of the story. So what is happening here? So our liver has, all cells in our body have insulin receptor sites. And in our pancreas is what releases insulin. When we have an insulin that matches the shape and size of this key, and then it opens the door and allows the glucose to go in. Now that key is a very specific shape. Your house key does not fit into your car door, and your car door doesn't fit into your gate lock. It's a very specific shape for a very specific function. Your car door is locked because you don't have the proper key. You need the proper key in order to unlock your car door. You can't use your house key. That's what's happening here. So the insulin is the key that gets into the insulin receptor site. And the way that our body is supposed to work is that it goes to our muscles, our insulin, and when we eat, our blood sugar starts to go up. And the more processed our foods are, the faster it rises, and the faster our pancreas produces insulin. But when we eat whole food plant-based with lots of fiber and nothing that's refined, then our blood sugars just go up very, very naturally, very slow, and there's no spikes, even if we eat all oranges just for our meal. It just doesn't work like that because of all the fiber. So the insulin will go over to our muscle cell and says, knock, knock, I have to bring the sugars down. Can I come in? The muscle says, sure. Just put your key in and unlock the door, and I'll take as much glucose as you need. But then the insulin starts to put in more and more and more and more and more glucose in the liver, and the muscle is like, whoa, wait a minute, I said you could put some in, but I didn't know you had that much, so it locks its door. And the insulin is like, well, now what do I do? So it goes to the liver. It goes, knock, knock, I need a place to put excess sugar. And the liver says, sure, that's my job. My job is to store sugar for in a case of emergency or fasting or whatever, so yes. And so the insulin opens up the door and it starts putting sugar in there, glucose, and then more and more and more and more. And the liver's like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't know you had this much, and it locks its door. Now the insulin is like, well, what do I do now? So it now goes to the fat cells. And the fat cells also have an insulin receptor site as an emergency backup. The fat cells do not like to take in glucose. But the insulin becomes like a bully, and as the blood sugars continue to rise, the pancreas starts to produce more and more insulin. And now you've got, instead of one insulin trying to get in and unlock the door, now you've got like 100 insulin trying to unlock the door, and they eventually will break the lock. And so fat cells are naturally insulin resistant. They don't want to take in that kind of nourishment that is for excess. And what happens is, as more and more insulin puts in the glucose into the fat cells, now our fat cells start to grow. It's kind of faded. Is it possible just to turn off these lights right here so you can kind of see this a little bit better? So now our fat cells start to grow, and you can see that our insulin receptor site now actually changes shape, because now you have a flat fat cell, and now, because of all that extra food and glucose that's going into the cells, now our cells start to grow and we start to grow. And so now we have all these insulin receptor sites that have an abnormal shape from its original. So what needs to happen now, and now we have diabetes, and and then we get more weight, and then more weight creates more insulin resistance. More insulin resistance creates more insulin, which creates more weight, and we just have this round circle, and we just continue to have worse and worse blood sugars. Our weight just keeps going up and up, and we can't even control it anymore. It's just this round robin of disaster. And then we start getting all these side effects and from all that blood sugar that's now in our blood. So now what do we have to do to reverse this process? First of all, as soon as we change to a whole food, plant-based, unrefined, high-fiber diet, high fruit, it takes about 3 or 4 days for the blood sugar to stop fluctuating so much, because those first couple of days your blood sugar is going to go up when you get off of all the animal products, all the processed foods. But eventually we see that our insulin receptor sites here, as our fat cells start to go down with all that fiber, now our insulin receptor site starts to go back down to a normal shape again. And then the liver now starts the liver, it's going to have like a muck and gunk in there, in the insulin receptor site. So that muck and gunk is known as saturated fat, cholesterol, and in those kinds of fats that our body does not like to have. And so now the insulin gets in there, or all the fiber gets into the insulin receptor site, and now starts to take out all that muck that's in the insulin receptor site, and now the liver becomes more open to the insulin. And then with the muscle cells, well, we have to start exercising, and because otherwise that glucose just sits in the cell and it doesn't do anything. and it's not willing to take in any more as long as there's energy in there. But as soon as we start to exercise, because every time that I exercise, I need some kind of energy, and now it's being utilized in the muscles, and the muscles now become less insulin resistant. So we can actually reverse this process in a very short time, and I'll show you what I've done in my program, but it's actually a very easy process to do, and all the people that are suffering with diabetes out there doesn't need to happen. It can actually be reversed in a very short order, if not days or weeks. Maybe some people it might take a month or two, but in the short order of time, we're not looking at years and decades to reverse it. It's a very short order, and then we reduce our risk of all those horrible side effects. So this is the other half of the truth. Does that make sense? I think it's important that we hear the other half of don't eat fruit. You see, it's because of our lack of exercise that creates insulin resistance, and then all of the animal products that we're eating creates insulin resistance because it's the saturated fat and the cholesterol that's clogging the insulin receptor sites. And as soon as we remove these offenders and we start moving again and we start putting in the beneficials, that things that are high fiber, like our beans and our fruit and our salads, our greens, our vegetables, now all of a sudden diabetes is reversed. It's amazing how that happens. So let's look at some inspiration now. We may use fruit freely. Now notice that word, freely. And it doesn't say vegetables, it says fruit. If you do a word search in the spirit of prophecy, you're going to come up with a food guide pyramid. The wording becomes very clear. So I did a word search on fruit and vegetables and grains and nuts and seeds. I did word searches and I pulled them out. So she says that we may use fruit freely, not vegetables, and in different ways, and run no risk of incurring the diseases that are incurred by using the flesh of diseased animals. We should bring our appetite under control so that we shall enjoy plain wholesome food and have an abundance of it, that none may suffer hunger. Notice that God tells us that fruit does not cause any diseases. What diseases are those? It's those two columns that I just went through a few slides ago, the diabetes and heart disease. Fruit does not cause any of those. It actually reverses it. And yet the world wants us to think that fruit is bad. It's the almighty dollar. Now look at this. This is Ellen White talking to a husband where his wife is almost dead. She says that your wife lacks vitality and needs a generous strengthening diet. How does God define a generous strengthening diet? She should have a good supply of meat. Fruit. She should have a good supply of fruit. Not vegetables, as wonderful as vegetables are. I'm trying to make a point for fruit here, because most people know the benefits of vegetables. And not be confined to the same things from day to day. She has a slender hold of life. She is diseased, and the wants of her system are far different from those of a healthy person. Here she is, who knows what disease she has, some kind of wasting disease, might be end-stage kidney disease, cancer, end-stage diabetes, I don't know. But whatever it is, if it were important for us to know what disease that was, we would have been told. But no, God says, in general, the sick need to have a generous strengthening diet of a good amount of fruit. Notice that she's almost dead. So for a dyspeptic stomach, which is indigestion, you may place upon your tables fruits of different kinds, but not too many at one meal. Now, this is I would say most people, when they have indigestion, the last thing they think about is fruit. They generally think of bread, pasta, rice, white rice. They don't think of fruit. But yet, that's our counsel, is fruit. Let's read some more inspiration. The more we depend upon the fresh fruit, just as it is plucked from the tree, the greater will be the blessing. A plain, simple, but liberal supply of fruit is the best food that can be placed before those who are, what? Preparing for the work of God. Wow. That sounds prophetic to me. That sounds prophetic that God's end-time people are going to be eating a lot of fruit. Like a lot. A fruit diet for a few days or a fruit fast has often brought great relief to brain workers. Who are the brain workers? The engineers, pastors, accountants, teachers, kind of everybody. Lots of brain workers out there. But who might it not include? Those big tree fellers. They are constantly running up and down the mountains in great shape. So a fruit fast. And yet we're told, don't eat fruit, have one piece or half of a green apple. Wherever fruit can be grown in abundance, a liberal supply should be prepared for winter. Apples are superior to any fruit for a standby that grows. All should be acquainted with the special value of fruits and vegetables fresh from the orchard and garden. She uses the word special value with the word vegetables only when it comes with fruit. She doesn't say to understand the special value of vegetables alone. She categorizes now vegetables with fruit as having special value. So what I'm doing is I'm building a food guide pyramid here for according to what we're reading. Do not eat largely of salt. Avoid the use of pickles and spice foods. Eat an abundance of fruit. And the irritation that calls for so much drink at mealtime will largely disappear. I can't tell you how many people I counsel who have to drink with their meals or they choke. And as soon as within a few weeks of increasing their fruit consumption to like a lot, they no longer need water with their meals anymore and they don't choke. It's amazing how fast that will happen. Wherever fruit can be obtained in abundance, it would be well for us to do less cooking. Let's take a look at this. Less cooking. We're talking about progressive in health reform. We're heading towards the Garden of Eden here. To do less cooking step by step and to eat more fruit in its natural state. Let us teach the people to eat freely of the grapes, apples, peaches, pears, berries, and all other kinds of fruit that can be obtained. And prepare these for winter, if you live in a winter place like we do. Let them impart this knowledge as they would Bible instruction. Let them teach the people to preserve the health and increase the strength by avoiding the large amount of cooking that is filling our world with chronic invalids. You see, our end-time message is high fruit and start to reduce the amount of cooking that we do. I know that there was a time on my plate when everything on my plate was cooked. Everything was whole food, plant-based, nothing refined, but everything was cooked. And when I started reading this counsel, I had to start changing my meals. And I've changed my meals a lot according to our counsel. Let those who advocate health reform strive earnestly to make it all that they claim it is. Let them discard most things detrimental to health. Is that what it says? Everything. God says everything. When God says don't touch of that tree and don't eat it, he means don't even be horse playing around and don't even accidentally touch that tree. When God says everything, he means everything. Like 100%. Like Daniel, Jesus, John the Baptist. No compromise. But again, it's step by step by step. It's not an all or a none. You're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and be 100% health reformer. I mean, in diet at least. You can in thought and direction, because it's a general direction in which we are going. But this is how we are to be moving more and more, and it's going to take time. Fruit is excellent and saves much cooking. It's not the fruit that causes diseases like obesity, diabetes, cancer, candida, fatty liver, and other symptoms like the world wants us to believe. Oh, if you have fatty liver, you can't have fruit. But yet that's our counsel. Fruit is the ultimate healer superfood. It's perfectly balanced, it's nutrient dense, it's antivirus, antibacterial, anti-aging, and it is our best friend when it comes to mealtime. Remember, Satan was the most subtle of all the beasts of the field. Have we believed his lie? Are we eating whatever we want and whatever tastes good and whatever I'm used to? This is what my church has taught me. This is how I was raised in my family. It's time to move on to the next step. God even tells us how to budget our food when it comes to food. Provide an abundance of good, wholesome food. It says, do not practice economy in this direction. Do not practice economy. And yet, what do? Well, we pay for our school bills. We want a vacation. We want an expensive house with a high mortgage. We want an expensive car that we might have to have a loan on. We want more clothes. We want to buy knickknacks for the house. And then whatever's at the end of the month, whatever's left over, then I'm going to buy my food. And then I end up with ramen and macaroni and cheese and all the flour products and things that are cheap. But God says turn that around. So what is God's order for our budget? It's tithe, it's offering, and it's our diet. That's God's order of our budgeting. And of course, not to be in debt, so the things that we do buy should be within our budget of everything, so we're not going into debt. But those are the top three priorities for God. Our tithes, our offering, and our diet. Fruit, if it can be obtained, is the best article of food. Let the same amount of money expended for meat be used to purchase fruit. Every penny, it says penny, expended for tea, coffee, and flesh meat is worse than wasted. For these things hinder the best development of the physical, mental, and spiritual powers. Let fruit be placed on the table in abundance. It should be the article of diet on our table, at the table of your helpers. So we don't, just because we might have a helper, it means that we are required to feed them just as healthy and not just give them the junk food because they're not of our family. No, we are responsible with the food that we place before everybody. Whether it's our husband, our wife, our children, church potlucks, We are responsible for God holds us accountable for what we put on the plate or what we put in front of somebody else. And everything that we serve is to be health reform. Supply with an abundance of good fruit, grains, and vegetables prepared in a nice, wholesome way. Here we go. The Lord intends to bring us back to live upon simple fruits, vegetables, and grains. God provided fruit in its natural state for our first parents. In order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan for man's diet. The original plan is the Garden of Eden. He who created man and who understands his needs appointed Adam as food. Behold, he said, I have given you every herb yielding seed, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for food. By precept and example, make it plain that the food which God gave Adam in his sinless state is the best for man's use as he seeks to regain that sinless state. Oh man, this is becoming really clear, isn't it? Again, we never eat our way to heaven. But as we are more particular in our diet, we become more particular with not sinning. And there will be a time when that door of probation closes, just like it closed on the ark. And that's coming fast. And for those of us who have not progressed along, we have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. I've had 29 years to make these kind of changes in my diet, but I changed as fast as I could throughout the years and I was able to change for what I understood as fast as I could, because I didn't think I had 29 years left. So I started changing as fast as I could. And yet it's taken me 29 years to where I am today. It takes time. We can't just wake up in the morning and I'm going to change everything and everything's okay. Because in the next talk, I'm going to talk about all the detox symptoms that we're going to go through. Even though, let no one think that he can do as he pleases in the matter of diet. We cannot afford to do otherwise. Let us comprehend these responsibilities and bear them nobly in the name of the Lord. And we do the greatest medical missionary work at the table. I can't tell you how many times I have been eating at the table, minding my own business. I eat my diet and you eat your diet, and people ask me about my diet. It's been an amazing journey to learn and to share. So as we near the close of time, we must rise higher and still higher upon the question of health reform and Christian temperance, not only by our words, but by our practice. Combined, they have a telling influence. You see, we can't teach one thing and then be a hypocrite and do another. God hates a hypocrite. He wants us to live what we teach. Satan gathered the fallen angels together to devise some way of doing the most possible evil to the human family. One proposition after another was made till finally Satan himself thought of a plan. He would take the fruit of the vine, also wheat, and other things given by God as food, and would convert them into poisons, which would ruin man's physical, mental, and moral powers, and so overcome the senses that Satan should have full control. Now this is particularly talking about alcohol, but we know that Satan has genetically modified some foods, but we're told that in Genesis that there is an order, that everything is after its own order. Because it says in Genesis 1:12, whose seed is in itself after its kind. And we can read in 21, every fowl and winged bird after its kind. And then in 24, all the living creatures after its kind, cattle and creeping things. And after their kind in 25, and everything creeping was after their kind. After our likeness, we are made after the image of God. There's lots of principles to tell us that genetically modified food should not be part of our diet. But would I worry about genetically modified foods before I worried with somebody about their meat and their dairy and their sugar and processed food and all the junk food and the 14 Twinkies that we eat a day? No, there's an order. You know, we do have to be reasonable about this. So when I look at the food, when I look about creating a food guide pyramid, this is what I see. So this is fruit, vegetables, grains, beans, nuts. These are the food groups. And now these are, the black words are spirit of prophecy words. I just read every single one of these to you. We are to eat fruit in abundance, freely, liberally, best, superior, blessing, more, fruit fast, depend upon, largely. Those are spirit of prophecy words. All of these other black ones are also spirit of prophecy. So when I look at building a food guide pyramid, it's very clear about how God wants his end time people to be eating. So vegetables are to be eaten largely with fruit. Now, she's not talking about fruits and vegetables in the same meal. She's talking about a broad category that our diet should have lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. That we are to encourage vegetables with fruit. They are to be properly prepared, well prepared, and some cannot use them. So we have our greens here, because we know that they were in the Garden of Eden. And then we have our starchy vegetables, which were not in the garden. And then we have our water-based vegetables, which were not in the garden. So we see that our fruit is to be abundant. And if we are looking at the Garden of Eden, that would include our herbs. And that if some cannot use them, that tells me that this category and this category is not absolutely necessary. If some cannot use them, that means that I will not be deficient in some category or in some nutrients if I cannot have them. Do you see that? She says that there are some cannot use them. And then with the grains and beans, with fruits and vegetables, is the diet chosen for us by our Creator. Some cannot use them again. So some cannot use them, and she was one of them. She couldn't take beans. To her, she said they were poison. If some cannot use beans and grains, that tells me again that they are absolutely not necessary. That as long as we are getting from our fruits and our greens, and she doesn't say to not use nuts, but she says that we do use too much. They are used unwisely. Some are less wholesome than others and do not use freely. They're too rich, and we should use 1/6 to 1/10 of what we do. So this is how I came up with the food guide pyramid. And so to me, fruit should be the largest part of our calories throughout the day, and then greens, and then a few nuts and seeds. And the research supports exactly what I found in the spirit of prophecy. We don't need anything extra. Now, I do have a home sanitarium, and this is a lady who came to me with gout that was quite severe. Me and 2 other men had to actually carry her into my house. And she was bed rest for the first several days, and then she was able to actually get up into a wheelchair a couple of days after that. And on day 7, I asked her, how's your pain doing? Because she'd been bed rest for quite some time, and her husband wasn't able to take care of her anymore. So he gave her an ultimatum that you either go to Dr. Janie's and see if she can help you, or you go to a nursing home. And he told me, she said, I'm not going to do either. And so he said, well, you've got to make a choice, because I can't, it's just becoming too hard on me, and if you're not going to make a choice, then I'm going to have to make a choice for you. And you'll have to go to a nursing home. It's just too much on me. And she says, fine, I'll go to Dr. Janie's. And she kind of came to me with that little attitude. And so on that day 7, I asked her, well, how's your pain doing? And she said, in our conversation, she doesn't have any pain anymore. And I said, like, you don't have any pain? And she said, no. And I said, why are you still in your wheelchair? Get up and walk. And here she got up and walked. On day 7 from bed rest. On God's true health reform diet. On the food guide pyramid I just showed you. And plus I included some cooked foods. So I'm going to show you, this is 6 weeks later. Oh, it's not playing. So this is a video that's supposed to be playing. Oh, it doesn't work? Okay. So anyway, her family kept her on this health reform diet, and this was sent to me, I believe it was 6 weeks later. And if the video were working, you would see her walking for the first time unassisted. 6 weeks. This is another woman who came to me, and this was her picture before, and I do have her permission to use her picture. But notice, she's kind of pasty. And notice that the wrinkles on her head, the lines in her forehead, you can see her eyes are quite gaunt. You can see inflammation that's around her whole face. You can see her nose and her pursed lips. Look at that, 10 days later. 10 days. Look at her eyes. Those eyes show life again. You can see all the worry lines are gone now. You can even see how kind of unkempt and unhappy even her eyebrows are. And look at they're all happy here. And you can see even her nose, the inflammation's gone down around her face as well. Look at that beautiful smile. I say praise God. 10 days. Here's another lady who came to me with diabetes way out of control for quite some time. Blood sugars 16.9, 18.7, 19.1. 19.1. She's got sugar in her urine along with ketones. And now here she is at my house wearing a continuous glucose monitor. And on day 7, she comes to me and she's saying, I can't believe she was saying this like every day, how much her blood sugars were improving. And on day 7, I said, let me see your continuous glucose monitor. And so here we have, so on day 7, and I said, what have your blood sugars been doing on average over the last 30 days with 7 of those days at my house? It's already gone down to 11.6. We see 40% of her sugars are in range. She's got 24% very high sugars, 36% high, and no lows, and 1% very low. So this is November 20th, and I'm going to go over here. This is still November 20th. And I said, what have your blood sugars been doing over the last 14 days? 7 of those days at my house. 10.9 with a standard deviation of 2.9, 58% in range. Still November 20th, I said, what have your blood sugars been doing over the last 7 days? 7 days at my house. 8.6, 9.1 standard deviation. Look at that, 91% in range on day 7 with a very high fruit diet. Now I said, what have your blood sugars been doing over the last 2 days? So this is still November 20th. 8.6, 1.2, it's tightening up. Look at that, 98% in range. And then on the next day, November 21st, I said, what have your blood sugars been doing today and yesterday? Look at that, 7.7, that's average now. And she's now 100% in range. She came to me on about 125 to 150 units of insulin a day. She left on less than 10 in 10 days. And yet we're told don't feed people with diabetes fruit. You see, I took away all the offenders and I added all the beneficials. And the world wants us to believe that the sugar that comes from Twinkies is the same sugar that comes from apples. And so many of us have believed the lie, and we've given up fruit in our diet. And this is sad because this is most of our own people, even pills and surgery. And when it comes to lifestyle change, it's optional. I'll just go to the doctor and get some pills, it's easier. But the laws of health says that we are what we eat. All right, let's look at this practically now. So this is my counter, what it looks like after I get done shopping. This does not include everything that I already put in the refrigerator. I just happen to take it, and this is while my husband and I are traveling. I do not change my diet when I travel. I eat the way that I eat, and no matter where I go in the world, I eat the way that I eat. And I don't deviate, because I've learned that from Jesus, John the Baptist, and Daniel and his friends. You don't change. You don't compromise for anything. You don't go backwards. You don't ever change the way you're eating to please another person. We eat the way that we do because that's where we are in our process. You're in your place and I'm in my place, and we all have to be comfortable where we are. I'm comfortable wherever you are, even if you're eating toads. I don't care. You know, and you should be comfortable with me if I'm only eating fruit. You know, because that's just where we are. There's no comparing each other where we are. So this is another day after shopping. This is before I put everything in the refrigerator. So you can see this is enough for less than 2 weeks for 2 people. After a week, I'm probably going to be shopping for a few things that are already missing. So I've got corn on the cob, and you can see all my greens here. I buy a lot of greens. I go through probably 1 to 2 heads of greens a day. And you can see the broccoli and all my lemons and, you know, all sorts of good things. All right, so let's see what we can make with some of these foods here. So here we have, I love my smoothie bowls. So I make a smoothie bowl with my fruit. This is hemp hearts with some diced mangoes and my extra whole oranges. This is a bread. It's a flat bread without yeast. I don't use any yeast. Yeast represents sin in the Bible. So this is a bread that is made out of 100% flax. It's flax and water and salt. That's it. And then I put it on a skillet and cook it lightly. And then this is guacamole. And I love my smoothie bowls. Here's another one. Here's another flat bread. This is made out of black beans, and then that's hummus there. And notice that the pattern here. Notice the large plates of food here, of fruit. And that the starches are a side dish. So starches are a side dish in God's pyramid. Most of us, when we go vegan or vegetarian, we go to a very high starch diet. And then we wonder why we're having health problems, because it's not God's order. This is, again, while my husband and I are traveling out and about. I love my greens, so that is a whole head of romaine, along with all that wonderful fruit there. Now, my husband, he eats granola. I don't. But he can eat how he wants, but he eats almost just like I do. And I brought bread with me as well. And, some of these pictures are not showing up. Too bad. So you can see I have very large salads. This is a large serving bowl for probably a serving of 4, a family of 4. And then there's some chia and a bunch of fruit, and I have blueberries in there. And then I have over here as well. This is this is my version of banana split, and I make banana splits for breakfast. So I cut my banana in half. This is 100% mango ice cream, 100% banana ice cream, and 100% strawberry ice cream. This is 100% raspberry ice cream. And this is carob. So it's just a little bit of carob with dates and a little bit of water. And so it acts like a chocolate sauce. And this is only dates and water in my Vitamix for toppings. And then if I'm fruit fasting, I'm only going to have that as the fruit. But if I'm not fruit fasting, then I will chop nuts on the top. Here is, this is another flat bread that I make. Well, it's not so much flat, but it's without yeast. This is made out of 100% buckwheat. So if any of you are interested in making any of these breads, just let me know. I'd be happy to share them. I do a lot of melons. So I do a lot of mono meals. So that would be like melons only, or just bananas, or just oranges. And it's a wonderful way to heal the body and to reduce inflammation and to heal diseases. And so I eat a lot of melons. Love them. Not sure, some of these are not showing up. I'm so sorry. I wanted to show locust. Now, we talked about locust is carob. The locust is a nickname for carob in Israel. And it's because they pod together like locusts. If you see locusts on a plant, you generally will see that they all congregate together in a mass. Well, when you look at carob, that's what they are like as well. And they're long pods that hang from a tree, and they all grow very tight together like you would see locusts. Now, there are some people who say that in one of the quote that it didn't show up, it says that John the Baptist was a pure vegetarian in Councils on Diet and Foods, but for some reason it didn't show up here. So locust represents divine judgment, the insect, economic destruction and the plague, total stripping of life and sustenance, national devastation, and a covenant curse. But yet it is a call to repentance. The locust bean, carob, the fruit, represents wilderness food, reformation, restoration, sustaining life without indulgence, preparation for the return of Jesus, teaches us dependency, simplicity, non-addictive foods, God's sufficiency, and humbleness. The Elijah message is a wilderness message. John was that type. We as God's people are that type, preparing for the day of the Lord. John ate only wilderness food, no preparation, no cooking, no luxury, fully simple, nothing cooked, no wine, indulgences, spice, or grains. The principle here is not to eat exactly this food, but it's to master our appetite. so that heart can be returned to God. And appetite is an absolute part of that process. So here's some more meals. So you can see again, this is a giant salad. We're talking about, a salad bowl that's like this. It's most people would consider that to be like a salad for 4 or 5 people, and I eat that in one meal every day. And I generally eat 2 of those a day, and then a bunch of fruit. There's some other examples. And I love my smoothies as well. So this is blueberries, this is strawberries with a little bit of hemp, my giant salad, and then pomegranates with more greens with tomatoes. All right, so this is a meal that I made for my husband. I don't eat bread, but he does. And I've got homemade pickles here, tomato, avocado, all that lettuce, and a giant salad. Another meal on another day, those are some patties with corn and a giant salad. Those are olives, well prepared, by the way. And also my dog eats like we do. So these are her raw fruits and vegetables, and then I give her plenty of beans. And I've consulted with a dog nutritionist specialist, and she's gone over my diet and that I feed my dog, and she's given me a total clear saying I'm doing great. And my dog loves it too. Sorry about these pictures that didn't come through, but then there are some happy people at my table. So this was a time when there was a couple of people that remained in church at Christmas time who didn't have anybody, so I invited them over, and this is our Christmas meal. Everything's whole food, plant-based, not refined, no sugar, and no yeast in anything, but just a wonderful meal that we shared together. Any comments or questions? Yes? The ice cream, how do I make the ice cream? So I freeze my fruit, and then I have a Champion juicer, and that Champion juicer, I put the fruit through the top, and it comes out the side ice cream. Yes? I do not use coconut milk. I might use it for my husband if I'm going to make him like a curry made with chickpeas and a bunch of veggies, but I personally don't. I use all different kinds of dressings. I love a salad dressing that's made with tahini. So it has tahini, lemon juice, garlic powder, onion powder, and I like cumin in my salads as well, so I might add that and a little bit of salt. I might use cashews as a base. I might use tomatoes and zucchini as a base for something with less fat. I might use, because zucchini is a wonderful base to make a dressing thick. Like if you're going to use tomatoes as a dressing, it becomes very watery. So if you add zucchini in there, which doesn't have any flavor, but yet it adds volume, and it's got the thickening agent in it. So it would act like cashews for a no-fat dressing. I use another one. I have another one that I love to have, and it's using, it's actually got peanut butter and tahini, and then some herbs that I use, because I don't use Bragg's, because Bragg's Aminos is MSG, and so I've created my own recipe in place of Bragg's. And I've also used my own recipe. I've created one that in place of nutritional yeast flakes, because nutritional yeast flakes are also MSG. So So I just kind of get creative. And I often put maybe cucumber in my dressing. I really like to have celery in my dressings. So I just kind of, and sometimes I'll put fruit in my dressing. But I do when I am having my fruit and vegetables or my greens in one meal, then I'm not having my root vegetables. So I am proper food combining, but I do not see that fruits and vegetables is like a sin to combine them. Because if you look in the spirit of prophecy where we are counseled not to mix fruits and vegetables, it is not a never. It actually, she's referring to those people who are ill and who have poor digestion. So anyone who has any kind of poor digestion or any kind of health problems, they should not be mixing fruits and vegetables, because vegetables are very starchy and they're very fibrous, where fruit is very soft and watery and not fibrous at all, very soft. And so that's why we don't generally want to be mixing them. But I do continually, I love my greens with my fruit, and green smoothies are also really wonderful. I mean, they have really healed people around the world. It's amazing. Yes?
Can you use honey?
Honey, under certain circumstances, if it is from a farmer that you know, and you also know how they feed their bees in the winter. When most farmers, what they do is they will harvest 100% of the honey for human use, and then in their place, they give the bees sugar water. And that's not nice. You know, those bees fly thousands of miles in order to provide, throughout the summer, in order to provide for themselves for the winter. And for a human to come in and steal their food, I think is quite cruel, and it's abnormal. And so if we know the farmer, and we know how they treat their bees, and they do leave the honey, some honey in there for the winter, whatever they need, then we don't really think of honey or bee abuse, but that is abusive. It's stealing the food that they have created for themselves. And then to put an inferior product really creates problems for them health-wise. And then they end up getting mites, and now the farmer has to put antibiotics in the water in order to, help that. I mean, it's a terrible thing. So we need to respect, God's his way. Because we see that John the Baptist, he took wild honey out of out of a lion, out of a carcass. Yes.
So for the longest time, I mostly hear vegetarians, but now, a lot of people say they're vegan. And I get confused because vegan for me is a lifestyle. So what is actually the difference?
Yeah, so vegetarian, vegan, actually let's use their definitions, not ours. A vegetarian technically is someone who just gives up meat. There's also a pescatarian who might not eat beef or lamb or anything, but the pesco vegetarian is someone who still eats fish. But a vegan is actually not a lifestyle so much. Technically, it's a belief system. The belief system is to do no harm to the animals. So the vegan is a belief system that the reason I am not eating any animal products is because I don't want to harm the animals. And therefore, I will not wear leather belts or use silk, or I will not use honey. I will not use anything that comes from an animal or is tested on an animal, and it's a philosophy. We are not vegans. We espouse the philosophy, or we should, but we are called health reformers. God has called his people to be health reformers, not vegans. Yes, it should be part of health reform. We do need to care about the earth. We do need to be tree huggers. We do need to care about the environment and the animals and if they're being tested upon. But that's not the reason why we are eating. The motive that we are eating the way that we eat is because God's commanded it. It's because I want to honor my body temple. And when I start eating more pure like that, all of a sudden, my whole understanding and my compassion starts to come out that if I see an ant on the ground and walking around carrying a little crumb, I'm going to walk over him. I'm not going to walk on top of him and squish him. Because we just start to have compassion for God's creation. And we understand that they're there for a reason, and the little guy is there, he's trying to bring food, to the den. And so why would we just squish them? Yes, we have a right to have homes that are free from pests, and if there's no way to humanely get them out, we do have permission to remove them because it does affect us. But for me, if I can save a bat or I can save a mouse that's in my house, I'm going to save it. Why do I need to kill it? Just because it's doing what's natural, because it's trying to find a warm place in the winter. So I'm just going to, capture it if I can, and then if I can't, well, I'm going to eventually set a trap, but not a glue trap, because that's pretty inhumane, but I'm going to set a trap to where they die instantly. So that's kind of, and then, so the whole food plant-based takes it another step, and their philosophy is more that I care about my body and my own health. So, but I'm still eating vegan, but the philosophy is different. But God, when he calls us to be a health reformer, it includes all of these. We are to care about the animals, and if they're being tested upon, and makeup that gets put into the eyes of these innocent little rabbits, and they go blind from the makeup that women wear so we can beautify ourselves. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy what we as humans do to animals. And so we need to care about those things, but a health reformer includes all of those plus a lot more, because the vegans and the whole food people generally do not talk about giving up alcohol, tobacco, tea, coffee, vinegar, the spices, chocolate, and that's part of our counsel as well.
That's where my confusion is. Like, for example, I am preparing food for someone who calls themselves vegan, but then I see that they're still wearing leather belts. So can I just prepare a food that is just plainly vegetable?
Yeah, so if you're preparing food for someone who's a vegan, but you see them still wearing leather or something, they just misunderstand what vegan means. Yeah, it's become a catch-all term for people who don't eat animal products at all. Yeah, you have a question? I saw your hand up earlier, or I thought I did. Okay, yes.
If the strawberries grown on a farm are so toxic, what kind of strawberry do you use in your diet?
Let's see, you're going to have to say that again.
Sorry my Spanish. What kind of strawberries
What kind of strawberries?
do you use in your diet?
What do I use in my diet? I do use only organic, because I can afford them, and that would, and if I couldn't afford them, I just wouldn't worry about it. I would not worry about it one single bit. I would enjoy my non-organic strawberries. Because if that's the worst thing, by faith, I am eating the way that I'm eating. Because God's commanded it, I want to honor my body temple to eat the way that he wants me to eat. So we eat the best that we can, and within his guideline, but he does expect us to move. So, yeah.
You never mentioned anything
Yeah, there's not a lot of iron in fruit, but there is iron in vegetables, and there's lots of iron in greens. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So, I'm a meat eater first, but my question is, because I do work out every day, the topic comes up to the protein. Now, I'm not too sure where you get the same source of powder from the protein in fruit. So that's my question to you. Where is your source of powder for protein within the fruit?
Yes, and I'm sorry that I actually downloaded the wrong Satan's War on Fruit that I gave it to you, because some of those pictures that did not come through, they're power lifters. And yeah, so I will show it to you because their pictures are on my phone. So they're amazing. Their bodies are absolutely amazing, and they are frugivores or they're fruitarians. So we get everything that we need. We do not need meat in any sense of the way. We have been sold a bill of goods that thinking that we need to eat meat. But the workout industry, they've been bought and paid for. Yeah, so we can build beautifully everything that you see in a meat-eating bodybuilder. You can do just as well and better than a meat eater on a frugivore diet. You're welcome. Yes.
Can I speak to that? Christian, if you're working out every day, what you want is energy. Quit eating meat, your workouts will be easy.
That's what I meant when I said you'll do better. Yeah. Because you'll have a lot more energy. Yeah. And you actually, the research shows that you will actually recover faster if you have fruit afterwards than meat. Yeah. Yes.
I used to suffer a lot from acid reflux,
Uh-huh.
so bad that I wanted to go to the hospital. When I stopped eating meat, I didn't have it anymore.
Yeah, amen. So she doesn't have acid reflux anymore when she's given up her meat. Yes, I hear that all the time. Yeah, that's excellent. Yes,
I suffer from hypoglycemia.
yes.
A fruited diet may not be ideal for me.
It's perfect for you. It actually is the perfect diet for you if you're hypoglycemic. You see, you're hypoglycemic because of all the other things that you're eating in your diet. And I'm not going to embarrass you or ask whatever else you're eating, but it's whatever else you're eating in your diet, guaranteed. It is not the fruit, 100%. I'm telling you, it's not the fruit. But if you give up all these other things that are the offenders, I don't know what you eat, but they are the meat, the dairy, the eggs, the processed foods, the sugary foods, the flour products, the dainties, the cookies, the ice cream, all of that is the problem. God's real food, which is fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, herbs, these things are not the problem. They actually reverse every single kind of disease. You're welcome. Yes.
I'm drinking tea, but I'm drinking like dried fruits or herbs.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, yes. Herbal tea is totally fine, or hibiscus, or something like that is totally fine. It's when it's caffeinated, which includes green tea. Green tea is big in the health food world, but health food enthusiasts, we are the most gullible of all people. I mean, they put, the MSG on us, they put the fluoride on us, and yet fluoride, it's an industrial waste. And they bill it to us as a beneficial. So, we really need to be in the Word, and when we look to the Word, the answer is very clear. Any other questions? Yes.
I have one about fasting.
About what?
Fasting?
Fasting, yes.
You were mentioning a while back that if you're doing physical labor, that you should do
Yeah, so if we are doing physical labor, we don't want to lose muscle mass, so we should be eating something. Yeah, we do need to be eating while we are doing physical labor.
And the same would apply to, say, Christian working out every day.
Yep, should be eating, yeah. All right, any other questions? So we're about a half an hour behind. So I'd like to give you a 10-minute break, and my next talk is also an hour and a half. All of my talks are an hour and a half, plus a half an hour Q&A. So the Q&A took about a half an hour or longer, and so but we started later. So do you want to call it good for the day? Or are you good going for another 2 hours after a break? Or I'll do consensus. What do you guys want to do? 10-minute break and then continue? Okay, so why don't we do a 10-minute break? And let's, it's about 33, so let's just come back at the 40. So that gives us like 7 minutes, 8 minutes. So let's come back in 8 minutes, then at 20 till.